Hi, everybody. I'm Leslyn Keith, the president of the board and director of research for the Lipedema project. And I get together with you most of the time on the first and third Thursday to talk about the research updates, the papers that have been coming out, which there's been a lot. I have quite a backlog of papers I want to talk to you about. This and the paper I want to talk to you about today was actually recommended by Catherine Seo. And so we're going to do a neat paper today. I also have a couple of announcements for you, but let's get right into it and talk about the paper first. So this paper we're doing today is Younger Women with Lipedema, Their Experiences with Healthcare Providers and the Importance of Social Support and Belonging, a Qualitative Study. Really cool paper. It just came out in January of this year, 2023. And it's in the International Journal of Environmental Research and Public Health. And the two researchers are from Oslo, Norway. And let me tell you, there's been a lot of great research that's been coming out of Norway. And this is one of them. So let's talk about this paper a little bit. And what's really neat about this study is that it was a qualitative study. They were specifically interviewing women with lipedema and getting whatever information that they wanted to share. They had some general categories that they were looking at, but then they're just looking for what was going to be shared by these women who were in this survey. And thank you for those of you posting and let me know that you're out there and you're listening. So the aim of this study was a qualitative study that really wanted to explore women's experiences in meetings with their healthcare providers and the importance of social support and belonging. And they wanted to have a special focus on younger women with lipedema. And so what they did is they recruited women through a Norwegian Facebook group. It's called the Norwegian Patient Association for Lipedema and Lymphedema. So they have this patient organization in Norway, and they were using their Facebook group to recruit women for the study. And so in order to be included in the study, you had to have a lipedema diagnosis that was given by a healthcare professional, and you had to be between 18 and 50. So they were trying to get younger women. And you're excluded for various things like pregnancy and having severe pathology like a cancer, if you're pregnant or breastfeeding, and if you had a severe psychiatric or personality disorder. So what they ended up was 15 participants with an average age of 36 years. So the range of the women that participated was 21 to 47. So they were very good about getting the younger range. And a pretty high educational level for the women in the study. Higher education, 13 of them, and 2 of them had vocational training. I think one was a chef. And then relationship status. They had married or in a long-term stable relationship was 10 out of 15. 5 were single and 7 had children. So work, they pretty much all were working. Most of them were all working. 10 were full or part-time working. 4 were students and 1 was on disability. So pretty high employment status. And then, so how did they collect this information? So it's a time-intensive thing for both the researchers and the participants, because what they did is a semi-structured interview with all these open-ended questions. They did it over the phone. And then after the interview was concluded, it was recorded, of course, and then they printed them out in verbatim. Whatever was said, that was put down. And so then these transcripts were then examined by the researchers to look for themes. And so the questions tended towards these certain areas. They were looking at what the social background of women, what were their experiences with living with lipedema, what was their social support, and what were the treatment options. So that was a broad areas that they were questioning about. So before I talk to you about the results of this study and the conclusions that they came to, I want to talk to you a little bit about the strengths and limitations of this type of study. So this one in particular, because of the design of the study, really what they got was just a very rich narrative from these women. And so we could learn a lot more about women, particularly younger women, and their experiences with lipedema. And it really looked at their experiences with their healthcare providers and social support and belonging. And they felt that it was a strength of the study with the number of participants they had, 15, was absolutely adequate, because by the time they were looking at the last of the interviews, no new themes came up. So they seemed to be covering all the important themes to this particular group. There was a couple of limitations. One is that they didn't get any data on when they were actually diagnosed, what stage of lipedema they were, how severe their lipedema was. So they didn't have any of that information. And then one thing they listed as a limitation was that they did all these interviews by the phone. And so you couldn't then see the body language as they were listening to and responding to the questions. But they talked about how this is good and bad, because there's other things, advantages that doing a phone interview offered, one of which is maybe they felt more comfortable sharing their experiences when it was over the phone instead of live in person. Also, they were able to get women from all over Norway, not just near where the researchers were in Oslo. So they felt like they were able to really span the whole country to get participants rather than just limited people in that area. And another limitation they talked about was that the women had a higher level of education. They were mostly all employed. And so you can't really generalize this information out to other women who aren't necessarily have those characteristics. So let's look at some of the results, because this was very interesting, and I highly recommend getting the study and reading it for yourself. They had two main themes that came up with these interviews. One was how women with lipedema experience meeting with their healthcare providers. And the second main theme was the importance of social support and the need to belong. So let's look at the first theme, and there's some sub-themes under that. And so the first theme, how women with lipedema experience meeting with their healthcare providers. So the first sub-theme under that was the various reactions that these women had to receiving a diagnosis of lipedema. And some of the women reported that they were going to many different healthcare providers trying to search for answers, but they were pretty much, they were dismissed and they left feeling helpless. They were not taken seriously. They pretty much felt that they were being overlooked and left to themselves. So when they finally did get a diagnosis, after sometimes going to multiple places, it was somewhat of a double-edged sword, because it was, on the one hand, a relief to get a name for their experience and to learn it was not their fault. But at the same time, they also experienced despair, because they were told that this condition is chronic, it's progressive, and it doesn't have a cure. And so, so there was a grieving part of that experience, but they also experienced anger. Some of them reported that, because it took them so long to finally arrive at a diagnosis, and they felt that they had already experienced years of not being diagnosed and not being properly treated. And so there was a great deal of anger in some of the women as well. So really a full spectrum of different emotions tied to getting that diagnosis. So the next theme or sub-theme under experiences with meeting with healthcare providers is misconceptions about lipedema. So the participants described being labeled lazy as not really trying to lose weight. And this was because of that lack of awareness about lipedema by their healthcare providers. They were, a lot of them unasked, they were given prescribed weight loss pills. They were told to exercise more, and they were pressured to get weight loss surgery because of that lack of awareness. And so that was very discouraging. Several women really felt like they were very disrespected and treated in an unprofessional-like manner during the meetings with their specialists. And they were stigmatized because of their providers just thought they had simple obesity, and that it was their own fault. It was their own behavior that caused the condition. So really, you see that lack of awareness coming in to play again. And then when they finally got that diagnosis of lipedema, there was really a lack of willingness by the healthcare providers to even talk about the mental health aspect of the condition. And they felt underserved in that way. They would have liked more help. And pretty much many of the providers just pressured them to go towards the liposuction route because they thought that was the only option available to women with lipedema. So that was discouraging. And then the next sub-theme under experiences with healthcare providers was engagement and knowledge led to appreciation. So this one was a little bit more positive. Because the paper talked about how most of the women who were part of this study did not get their needs met, but some did. And the ones that did, they felt like they were seen and heard by their providers, even if their providers really didn't know a lot about lipedema. It was handled compassionately and caringly, and they saw them, they heard them, so they were open to learning more about lipedema. And several specifically named that once they were referred to a therapist who specialized in treating lipedema, that was the most satisfying part of their dealings with healthcare providers, because now here's someone that was recommending, here is some non-invasive things that we can do to help manage your symptoms. And so they were given strategies like MLD and compression garments, things that were, they felt like were much more a collaborative type of thing to figure out what to do together. And they really valued those interactions. So that's very interesting to find that out. So now we're going to shift over to the next main theme, the second main theme that this paper discusses, and that's the importance of social support and the need to belong. And this also had two sub-themes underneath that: social support and belonging. So the first one was self-confidence and romantic relationships are more challenging at a younger age. That is interesting. I did not expect this outcome. So the participants that were in their 20s and early 30s, they reported more problems with self-confidence, self-esteem, and mental health issues. They felt negatively about their body, and they were prone to eating disorders. And as you can imagine, this made romantic relationships challenging. So the participants that were in their later 30s and in their 40s, interestingly, reported that although they no longer felt this way, they had felt that way when they were younger. So that was an interesting outcome. The participants that were already in a monogamous relationship, whether married or not, reported that these were supportive, they were safe, they were loving. That was kind of neat to hear. And the participants who were single, however, found it challenging to find a partner. And this was because of their embarrassment about their body, and also the fear of being touched because of the pain response. So you can see how that would make a relationship challenging. And so the next sub-theme is talking about social support is a necessity. That is interesting that this came out. This is not an option. You need to have social support with this condition. And the participants shared that having the support of their loved ones was important, but interestingly, the biggest impact was support and connections with their peers. So being involved in patient associations with social support over, for instance, Facebook groups, and meeting other people that had lipedema, this was super important. And so it was not only important to get support, but also to share experiences and give support to other people that had this condition. So very interesting. Also, kind of an unexpected thing, that how important that sense of belonging, that community is to the condition of lipedema. So some conclusions that they came to, there's quite a few that they suggest that this study shows. And the number one thing they said was the importance of belonging and social support when living with lipedema. That was number one. And then they had some other things underneath that they talked about, that younger women, particularly in their 20s and 30s, seem to be more vulnerable. This, by showcasing the interactions that women are talking about that they have with their healthcare providers and how those are going well or not so well, this hopefully will raise more awareness about the stigma that can be attached to fat disorders, to obesity, to lipedema, and that hopefully then the interactions will be carried out with more respect and understanding. So they're hoping that this study can help raise that awareness. They're also hoping that this study will help with getting an earlier diagnosis, and better treatment, better management strategies can be employed sooner for younger people with lipedema. And really, they're saying that we need specialized healthcare services to take care of these women with lipedema in a more timely and professional manner. Because unfortunately, a lot of people with lipedema are living with shame and stigma. So that really comes from the lack of knowledge and understanding from the healthcare community. But it could be, with just the community in general. But I think that when you're going to your healthcare provider, you expect to at least get some understanding there. And they were talking about women in their early 30s and in their 20s. They have a lot more difficulty with lower self-esteem and lack of confidence that make going into new romantic relationships more difficult. And they need to feel safe and supported. And it reiterated the importance of these patient organizations for support and belonging for people with lipedema. And it's really a necessary component to being able to deal with, to manage lipedema. So pretty interesting paper. I would highly recommend. I'm giving you the link for the paper is in our comments down below, and highly recommend reading the paper yourself. It's very readable. Sometimes we read these things that have talking about molecular components and stuff like that are not so readable. This is a very readable paper, and I think you'll find it interesting. But I tried to give you the high points of it. And so it's exciting research that's coming out of Norway. This is just one of many that I've been looking at. And when I was reporting earlier last month, and I was talking about different research opportunities for you to participate, or if you know someone that qualifies and participate in research, there were several that were being done in Norway. So there's more to come. So that's exciting. Now, what else do I have for you today? Well, first off, there is my email, leslyn@lipedemaproject.org. And if you have a paper or study that you would like me to review, that you want to make sure that my attention gets called to a certain paper, be sure and email me. If you have a question about any of the papers that I review, be sure and let me know, and contact me by email. I always love to hear from you. Couple other announcements. I want to talk to you about a webinar that I'm going to be doing with Siobhan Huggins this Saturday. And we are going to be doing it this Saturday, March 4th at 4 p.m. Eastern. It is Kind Keto for Lipedema, gentle nutritional self-care. And so Siobhan and I are going to be talking about, if you're not already experimenting with keto, what can you do? And maybe stepwise, what can you start with? How can you make this a gentle experience for yourself and not something traumatic? Sometimes women are finding, or anybody with lipedema or anybody in general is finding, that a drastic dietary change can be pretty hard on your body. And so Siobhan and I are going to be talking about how you can be kinder and gentler to yourself and make it not such a drastic experience, and something that's going to make you feel better. So we're going to be talking about that on Saturday, March 4th, 4 p.m. Eastern. And so please join us, and we'll have links down below for you to register for that. It is a free webinar happening this Saturday. What else do I want to talk to you about? Thought there was something else that I was supposed to talk to you about. I think that's the main thing, is be sure and contact me. Save the date. So, and just remember that we are doing an event March 31, April 1 and 2, our Fresh Take on Lipedema and Lymphedema Solutions, a heart-to-heart collaborative 3-day virtual community event. And so more information to come on that. Make sure you mark those dates on your calendar. If you sign up you'll get our early bird price of just $97. Of course, this is all being online, so watch from the comfort of whatever you call home. And so we're reaching people around the world, both all of our speakers, our vendors, our participants. We're all going to be from around the world and participating in this event. So we hope you'll join us. So I think that is it for today. And of course, I will be back here again on the third Thursday of the month in March with another paper. Maybe it's one that you've recommended. Be sure and contact me. I always love to hear from you. And I look forward to seeing you hopefully at the webinar on Saturday. Julie asks, Leslyn, will it be recorded? Yes, make sure that even if you're not available for the webinar on Saturday, register for it, because if you are registered, you will get links to the replay. So make sure you sign up for that, because then you'll get that opportunity. I will just look really quick through my comments. Hi to Julie and hi to Susan. And she says her doctor just found the medical code for lipedema. Yes, we now have a code for lipedema that we can use. And so it's great to have lipedema in your medical record. Yes, hi to Julie. Thank you so much for being here, Julie. Thank you so much, everybody. And I will see you, probably something a lot sooner than this Saturday, but hope to see you there this Saturday.